Nathaniel West's Day of the Locust traverses through the vacuously effervescent culture of Hollywood Los Angeles, with protagonist Todd Hackett and his cohort of vapid actors, studio executives, and California immigrants, all in search of success or fame, or both. But with this story comes one other element that has yet to receive the attention it deserves: the environmental destruction of California. Set in the 1930s, The Day of the Locust is the story of a movie set designer, Todd Hackett, who, like seemingly everyone else in the novel, has migrated to the Golden State in search of what is considered to be the American dream. Along the way, Todd finds others around him who are in search of the same thing, though with a different approach in their pursuit of happiness in Hollywood. Over the course of the novel, Todd's imagination, even though the work he has been instructed to focus pertains to other subjects, cannot help but picture the city he lives and works in burning to the ground in a great holocaust. The narrator refers to this vision as the burning of Los Angeles. A recurring motif the author deploys throughout the novel, this imaginative mural of citizens of Los Angeles being consumed in the flames of a horrific fire, as well as buildings and the entire landscape in general, is something Todd constantly dreams up in his head, even though the mural itself never comes to fruition, a reverie never physically completed. The Day of the Locust focuses very much so on the culture of Southern California, offering a great deal of criticism toward the Hollywood entertainment industry. But for this analysis, I believe what demands greater attention is with the thematic concept the author ultimately concludes with by the end of the novel: a towering conflagration devastating the entire Hollywood metropolis as a violent mob rains chaos down on the city of Los Angeles, just as protagonist Todd Hackett himself imagined it. In literature, the symbolic image of fire destroying, or in some cases completely leveling, historically significant cities has been in existence since the very beginning of Western literature. From the myth of Prometheus to the sack of Troy and Homer's Iliad to the Day of the Locust, the mimetic symbolism of fire has always remained present. What I find to be so fascinating about the Day of the Locust is that even though it was the first fictional narrative of Hollywood Los Angeles burning in a great conflagration, this idea of fire devastating the environment of California is not altogether new or unheard of. California's record with fire, natural or man-made, extends virtually all the way back to the very beginning. Historical records show that in 1542, when Portuguese colonizers arrived in the Bay of San Pedro, they were at first met with great plumes of smoke casting gray clouds over the entire area. Upon landing, they discovered that indigenous tribes of Native Americans, the Tongva, had practiced the traditional ritual of safe ground burning in order to clear paths used for travel. The Spanish-led Armada then formally decorated the area we now know as Los Angeles, Bahía de los Fumos, or Bay of the Smoke. And this tradition of controlled forest burning is still used to this day, though environmentalists have voiced their concerns and reservations about the extensive usage of this practice, and for good reason. In the past 10 years alone, wildfires have destroyed more than 7.9 million acres of land, approximately 24.7% of inhabitable land in the state. To offer a better perspective of just how exacerbated fires have become in California, official state records show that of the 20 most catastrophic fires in the state's history, 12 occurred in just the past 5 years alone. And of these 12 major fires, more than 50% in relation to their official cause have been categorized under human-related. The natural element of fire has been tied to California's landscape, as we've already seen, but the ontological properties of fire to the state have changed dramatically. On one hand, with Native American tribes, fire was seen as nature's tool, with its usage tied to the concept of it being operated under the control of those who sparked the initial flame. And then, on the other hand, we have now a period of human interaction with fire completely absent of any control. One works against the other as the other vies for the sense of control, for the ability to manipulate the element once again. With fires becoming more ubiquitous in modern times every year, especially on the western coast of the United States, the conflict only becomes worsened by the conditions of the environment as a whole. Stephen J. Pine writes in his book The Pyrocene that the world, and in particular the continent of Australia, Siberia, and the western coast of the United States, have been experiencing severely more dangerous fires every year over the past 2 decades. And this has brought humankind into a new epoch altogether, hence the name, the Pyrocene. With serious effects of climate change exacerbating dry conditions of flora and vegetation, particularly in the southern region of California, which has already been shocked by consistent years of drought, the conditions for great conflagrations to appear and rage across landscapes have turned it into the ideal breeding ground for fires to spread during certain times of the year. Similar to the narrative of the Day of the Locust, the narrative of California's environment has been that of wildfires devastating the northern and southern region of the state. From news reports to endless articles published by regional and national affiliates, the stories in many ways never change, only variations of statistics in the names of cities or dwellings. And like the novel's main character, Todd Hackett, violence imposed on the environment has loomed over the imagination of the state's inhabitants for generations. And unfortunately, there appears to be no clear signs of this catastrophic problem being remedied anytime soon. This dark side of California's environment has been well researched in the field of ecology and social studies by expert Mike Davis in his expansive text, Ecology of Fear. In his text, Davis makes the claim that California, when the conversation turns towards that of natural disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, fires, and so on, have been, if anything else, rendered down from catastrophic categories to entertaining plotlines for big-budget Hollywood films, of which Davis writes, "The gleeful expendability of Los Angeles in the popular imagination is in no small part due to Hollywood, which, when not immolating itself, promotes its environs as the heart of darkness. No city in fiction or film has been more likely to figure as the icon of a really bad future, or present for that matter. By now there exists an equation which I'm sure we've heard of before. Over-the-top films we all know will be hitting theaters this summer by one of the major studios, probably starred Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or someone else just as equally handsome, and will be most likely directed by this guy." But Davis goes on to examine a plethora of theories as to why Los Angeles has always been the target for catastrophic events, to which he explores issues related to race or political unrest. But his most convincing argument lies in his claim that the City of Angels is actually the worst perversion of the now extinct American dream. In commenting on the relationship between the literary destruction of Los Angeles and American exceptionalism, Davis writes, "Now the tables have turned from the ideal sunny subdivisions, beaches, and Disneyland, and has now become a dystopian symbol of Dickensian inequalities and intractable racial contradictions. Translating this into my own words, California now only represents the worst of American life, and yet still continues to promise a check it cannot afford to cash." But author Mike Davis appears to be echoing common themes found in Walter Wells' Tycoons and Locusts, which explores the concept of regionality in literary narratives of Southern California. To begin, Wells critiques The Day of the Locust as a story where we witness an ongoing breakdown of human values, purposes, and dreams when nothing but sordid emptiness left in their wake. And once again, what is destroyed is expressly that collection of aspirations and impulses which constitute the great American dream. But even more so than that, Wells argues that the regional influence is the sole force that drives the story's narrative, tone, and thematic conception, because in the end, The Day of the Locust is, in reality, a story more so about a place or an idea than any one character in the book, and it's Hollywood and those who embody it who have corrupted the quote-unquote dream. An interesting idea that Wells proposes to this concept of regionality in The Day of the Locust is his consideration of the geographical area of Los Angeles. West Southland, or Hollywood, is not only the dream's most vivid dying ground, it is the final one, the place where America physically ends, whence there is no place left to run. What Americans who have migrated to the City of Angels expect to reap for their own benefit is the image of perfect living conditions, a paradise by the sea. But in reality, as Wells points out and what Nathanael West illustrates in his novel, is exactly what the not-so-golden state has to offer its newcomers. A grotesque culture of poverty, crime, violence, held within the confines of a deteriorating environment. But around this grotesque culture that Nathanael West's story encompasses remains the prescient image of the Golden Coast set ablaze by any number of causes. And whether it be downed power lines, a powerfully accurate strike of lightning, or human error, the state remains as it always has, an image of scorched earth. This prescient theme in West's novel is simultaneously terrifying and profound, because not only has it tapped into the conflict that still ravages the state all over, but it taps into the history of the state as well. And though the culture has been the main critical focus of Nathanael West's novel practically since its genesis, the culture has remained just as vapidly static back then as it is today. But the idea of violence inflicted on the environment, whether it be from man's own shallow incompetency or ignorance or suppressed rage, one cannot say that the problem has been mitigated. The fire is still here, still burning, and still spreading, just as it was in the beginning.